What's up, folks? Frank here, your favorite sorcerer. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a servitor. Okay? Now, the next part of this video, you're going to actually see me create a servitor or an egregore. And, a lot of the details are going to be discussed in the ritual. Before I go into the ritual, let me define a couple of things first. Okay, so first of all, what is a servitor and egregore, and why would you prefer that or use that instead of some spirit out of a grimoire? First of all, a servitor or an egregore is a self-created, meaning created by the magician, by you, a self-created thought form that can act on your behalf without your conscious attention. Okay, so you would create that thought form, give it a certain amount of abilities, capabilities, and then send it on its way to accomplish a specific task for you. Okay? And this is also the reason why you would sometimes prefer a servitor instead of an egregore, because sometimes the tasks that you have for that servitor is just very, very, very specific, very narrow, and sometimes you just won't find a spirit for that. Another thing is, or another factor is that when you're dealing with demons from a grimoire, oftentimes you have an entity with its own will. Okay, and there's all kinds of bargaining and all kinds of things that you have to take into account when you deal with them. When it's a servitor, you're totally free to create your own servitor with all kinds of different abilities and capabilities. Now, usually they're not as powerful as a spirit from a grimoire, but you don't need a demonic king for each and every single task that you want to accomplish with your magic. Okay, so sometimes it's definitely beneficial and useful to just create your own servitor for a specific task for a specific amount of time, and then to just destroy it again. Okay, which leads me to the next point. When you create that servitor, that egregore, you should always include a kill switch. Okay, what does that mean? The kill switch is some sort of command that you include in the creation process of that being, which makes sure that you can destroy it at whatever point in time you want. Okay. Now, why would you do that, and why is that important? Let's say you create that servitor, give it a sufficient amount of energy so that it exists, and then you keep feeding it energy, you give it offerings so that it keeps existing and keeps working on a task that you created for. And then the task is accomplished, and you just forget about it. Here's what's going to happen, or could happen. You have created an entity that wants to keep existing. Okay, in order to keep existing, it will have to find energy sources. Okay, and sometimes that energy source could be you. So it's going to start feeding on you. That's a possibility. That's an actual possibility that you should take into account. And another thing is that it could just cause havoc or influence or unwanted influence in your life. You see what I mean? Those are all possibilities that you have to take into account and take measures for. Okay? So in order to avoid all of this bullshit, you just program in a kill switch, which could be a specific command, and I'm going to show you exactly how that is done. And that makes sure that once the task is accomplished, that spirit is just destroyed and the energy is dissipated or recycled or whatever the fuck you want to do with that. Okay? So in the next part of the video, I'm going to show you how to create that. I'm going to go into the ritual, and I hope you enjoy this. Peace. Okay, so before you begin the actual work, meaning the ritual, you will have to decide on a couple of things, specifically what this servitor is going to be used for. I am going to create a servitor that is used for psychic protection. Also going to include that only I am able to use it. Okay, so that's going to prevent any of you guys trying to evoke it later on. I'm also going to decide on its abilities. Okay, and it will be able to, you know, fight off any psychic attack. Okay. Besides that, I'm going to have to decide on the energy source. Well, after I created it and after I charged it the first time, it's going to have to keep feeding, right? Because it's a thought form and it needs energy. And I'm going to give it the ability to be able to feed off my enemies, hidden or known. Okay, so the thought form is connected to my energy field. Okay, and my enemies are also connected to my energy field in some way or another. You see, so I don't even have to know these people, but this entity is going to be able to feed off of their energies. So there's really no effort on my side of keeping it alive, keeping it working. You know? If you want to, you could now go into its appearance, if that's important to you. If you want to give it a certain appearance, I'm going to give it a name that I'm not going to let you know here. Okay, and I'm going to use the 4 elements. I'm going to use the 4 elements as a reality matrix and energy source to create it. Okay, so that's essentially how the planning is done. Okay, and the rest of it really just happens through the medium of your own imagination, okay, which is what I'm going to show you in just a second. Okay, in this ritual I'm going to use the 4 elements in order to give life to the servitor. Your servitor will need some sort of physical interface, which will be your focal point for any kind of like offerings that you do when you feed them later on, and as well as when you create it. Okay, so the energy that you conjure up goes into the physical interface, which in this case is a rock. Okay. Begin the ritual by centering yourself, which means leave the mundane world behind and relax your physical body and bring all your energies back into the self. For that purpose, you could use any kind of banishing that you want. I'm using a very simple one, but it is very, very effective and sufficient for this work. Okay. Now, as I've centered myself, I can redirect my entire attention on the work at hand. I'm going to begin by conjuring out the energy of the element earth. And for that purpose, I'm using a mudra. Now, this mudra all by itself, as you allow yourself to relax and become aware of the subtle energy running through you, you will become aware of earth all by itself, the energetic quality of earth, okay? But you should always help that process and strengthen it by some sort of visualization that you use, okay? See yourself sitting on top of a mountain and feel the solidity of the mountain below you. Root yourself in earth. Solidity is really the key point here. Another good way to get in contact with the element of earth is salt. Okay? It's a good connector to that energy. Okay, so if you want to, you can sprinkle some salt onto that rock. Now, as you have brought enough of that energy into your aura, push it through your right hand into the rock. And synchronize that with your breath. Breathe in and breathe that energy through your right hand. The next element that is going to be used is water. Okay. The next hand mudra that I'm using is designed to conjure up the energy of water. Okay, and like I said before, help the conjuration of this energy with your imagination, which will make the shift of the subtle energy within you cause through the mudra even stronger. Okay, so in this case, you could see yourself swimming in water. You could imagine yourself standing in an ocean, being pushed back and forth by waves. Really feel, the weightlessness as you are swimming. Feel a witness, and also come back to the more subtle qualities or etheric qualities of that element, which is like emotions. Okay, and another good way to get in contact with that element is obviously using water, sprinkle it on the rock. The next element used here is fire. Once again, there is a hand mudra that you can use for that. Okay. Do whatever you need to get in contact with that energy of fire. Okay, it could be a flame. Okay. But the more important thing here is what is going on energetically and in your imagination. Understand that focused thought and imagination condenses down into something that affects first the astral and later on the physical. Okay? So make sure that you feel the heat, see yourself standing in the midst of fire, the sun, whatever. Heat, generate heat energy. And then, once again, push that into the rock. Now, you must understand that you're not pushing it, well, you are pushing it into the rock. However, what you're actually doing is you're surrounding it with layers of energy. Okay? So, physically, it's just a rock, but astrally, you are changing its essence. So, it is actually coming to life, and it is a being that you have created through your magical powers. Now the next element will be air. And once again, a hand mudra is used to conjure up the energy of air. Okay? You can use whatever visualization or imagination that connects you to that element. And what is most beneficial with all of these elements really is to focus on the pure intention to connect to that element, okay? Which will make sure that you connect to its mental aspects, its emotional aspects, its its physical aspect. Okay, so you will feel wind blowing against your skin. You will also get a sense of the intellectual qualities which air represents, really ideas and communication. Also, you can once again use the salt and blow it onto the rock to symbolize the conductor function of air, which brings us back to communication. Once again, when you have a sufficient amount of that energy in your aura, push it into the rock. And lastly, relax yourself again so that you get in touch with the subtle energies around you. And in your mind's eye, you will then see a being around that rock. Okay, and also use your hands to feel the aura that has now been created around that thing. Okay, you have now created a servitor. Okay, awesome. Now that you know how to create a servitor, let me lose a couple of last words before I end this video. Decide upon the name of that spirit beforehand, and I probably already mentioned that. I'm not completely sure, but you should decide what name it will have beforehand. Okay. Also, like I mentioned in the ritual, it should have some sort of physical interface. Okay, it could be a rock like I just used, or it could be a necklace, could be a ring, could be anything, really anything. Okay, this will be your interface. It's kind of like a shrine, you could say. Okay, a shrine follows the same principle. Okay, the spirit doesn't live inside of the shrine. It is a physical interface, a connection to that energy. Okay. Yeah, sort of like an access point. So you will have an easier time accessing this energy by focusing on that interface. Right? What else? You could decide upon doing offerings for that servitor yourself. Okay, that's definitely an option if you want to. Okay, but you could also program it to be able to feed off of your enemies, hidden or known, just like I did. But the more energy, the better, right? So you could also do both. That's not a problem. Understand that in these rituals, you have to raise a lot of energy. Okay, so give it a sufficient amount of time. Give it a sufficient amount of time, whatever it takes, however long it takes to really shift your reality to the extent that it seems totally real. And at that point, you will definitely have caused an effect on the astral. Okay. I think this is sufficient. With that being said, I hope this was helpful. Rebellion, liberation, and mastery. Peace out.